Remember earlier, the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States had said that Russia will carry out that attack on the 16th of February, to be precise. But that clearly did not happen. Cracking a probable date for Russia's attack, that's perhaps the biggest challenge for the CIA as of now. It was just days ago that the US president informed Western leaders that Russia might launch the invasion on the 16th of February, but it was the US National Security Advisor who spoke of a full Russian invasion of Ukraine before the end of the Beijing Olympics on the 20th of February. This at a White House press briefing last week. He said, and I'm quoting, "I will not comment on the details of our intelligence information, but I do want to be clear, it could begin during the Olympics, despite a lot of speculation that it would only happen after the Olympics." And that is why the 20th of February, that's what's worrying the CIA and Russian experts. It happens to be the last day of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Speculation remains rife that Vladimir Putin would not launch an invasion before the closing ceremony. This only to keep the Chinese President Xi Jinping happy. Interestingly, the 20th of February is also when the largest military exercise since the Cold War is scheduled to end. Moscow and Minsk have promised the Russian president's troops would head home. But the NATO has already dismissed Moscow's claims of a Russian army retreat as being false. The Munich Security Conference also happens to end on the 20th of February. Leaders like the US Vice President Kamala Harris, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, the Ukrainian president will be participating in person. For the Kremlin to attack Ukraine when these leaders, and specifically their own leaders, are abroad could prove to be ultimate humiliation. Interestingly, no Russian official is attending the transatlantic gathering. US officials have also warned of Russia's plans to conduct a nuclear exercise in mid-February. Not just as a show of force to the US, but to also couple the invasion with the drill. Many, including Ukraine, believe that the US is only drumming up the war rhetoric. In an interview to WION, an exclusive interaction, this is what Ukraine's envoy to India had to say.
For some people, this 16th of February, it became some kind of tamasha, mukabla. Who will predict the exact date? You see, even yesterday, when there were first signs of de-escalation of situation, you see, it sounds really ridiculous.
The fact remains that the CIA has been left at its wits' end by Russia, a country governed by Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent. Ukraine is just the latest flashpoint for the two intelligence giants. Considering the CIA and the KGB have jockeyed for advantage against each other for decades now, especially throughout the Cold War, countless campaigns were launched against each other. Many resulted in proxy wars and assassinations. The theft of America's atom bomb secrets was the KGB's greatest coup. The CIA also hired KGB officers to betray the Kremlin on many occasions. For more perspectives on these developments, joining us on the broadcast this minute is Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, defense expert at the Baltic Security Foundation in Kiev. Thanks very much for being here with us, Glenn. The U.S. Defense Secretary in the latest says Russia is now stocking up on blood supplies, inching the troops closer to Ukraine's borders and flying in more combat aircraft. Can you tell us more about the assessment in Kiev about the Russian deployment as of now?
Yes, I mean, Russia has got about 150,000 troops around three sides of Ukraine, and it's also got ships, landing ships that can carry a considerable amount of people, maybe even as many as 10,000, depending upon how many vehicles they put into the ships. So they could attack from the north down from Belarus around Kiev, from the east towards Kharkiv, or to the south into the area of Donbass that's been held by Russia for the last 8 years, or by sea. So Ukraine has got quite a serious problem here. I think I heard you just mention previously that the troops were pulling back, which of course is not true. All that's happened is that Russia has actually moved some troops from Crimea, some tank troops, where they were not actually very useful, and put them round onto the eastern border. And in fact, in the last day, there's been an increase of about another 7,000 troops from Russia, and troops are still coming in on the train daily. So the idea that the 16th is some sort of magical date is obviously wrong. Probably after the 20th, after the Olympics finishes.
I was just coming to that. What do you make of the Russian claims of troop withdrawal, de-escalation? At the same time, no specific numbers have been given out of the number of troops who are now pulling out.
Yeah, well, the first thing you have to remember is that Russia doesn't tell the truth on anything. It's only lies, and they've been lying solidly for 8 years, breaking every ceasefire for 8 years. So they say they'll do a ceasefire, and then 20 minutes later, a sniper kills someone in Donbass. So whatever Russia says, you just have to almost look for the exact opposite, and you're getting closer to the truth. So there is no withdrawal. Russia is there, and it's still there, and it's in an aggressive, ready-to-go-to-war position.
The Ukrainian president has just a short while back says Kiev has little chance of joining the NATO because of resistance within the alliance. What do you make of that?
I think that's probably true at the moment, but I mean that's partially because of the activities of Russia, and because NATO doesn't want to let someone into NATO that's actually got a hot war against another country like this. But long term, I'm fairly sure that Ukraine will be joining NATO once this sort of war with Russia is finished, because people want her there, because Ukraine is a European country. And because it's a good place and a good country, and it should be in NATO.
There were varying assessments from the Western officials as well of the number of troops deployed. At the same time, there is a claim coming in from Russia, as we discussed, about the troop withdrawal. No numbers have been given out. If we were to elaborate for our viewers on the strengths of the NATO and the Russian deployment as of now.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, there is no NATO deployment inside Ukraine. That's the first thing. There is only Ukrainian troops inside Ukraine.
Yes.
The Russian strength is about 150,000 around Ukraine, but you have to you can't really count that as a simple figure, because you've also got to add in reserves that can come from further back, parachute forces that can come by plane from other places. And anything that can come in on the railway in the next day. So the front line is 150,000 approximately. But behind that, Russia could easily pull together another 200,000 or 300,000 troops quite quickly if they wanted to.
Let's also talk about the intensified diplomatic efforts that have been made over the last few days. Are you optimistic, if at all, that diplomacy could still avert this escalation of tensions further and avert war?
No, because I'm not at all, because there's no diplomacy on the Russian side. It's bullying and blackmail, and Putin doesn't change his line whatsoever. And what he's asked for and what he's been asking for are things that he knows he's not going to get, and this is deliberate. He wants to be able to say to Russians in Russia, we gave the Americans clear things for them to do, and they refused. Well, of course they're going to refuse, because they're asking for effectively for the impossible, which is to disband NATO and pull back to the borders before people like the Baltic states were members of NATO. Well, that's not going to happen.
Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Grant, appreciate very much you're joining us on the broadcast and sharing those perspectives. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.